All right, I got some great questions in regarding shift work. I have now worked with nurses, people who work different times of the day, and I have seen a kind of slightly different approach to what works well for those situations versus somebody who maybe works more of a 9 to 5 job. They're home in the evenings, they're sleeping, getting up the next day. So what you want to remember first and foremost, if you're on a shift job, maybe you're going in from, 11 to 2, or maybe you're going in from, I don't know, 2 in the afternoon to, 1 in the morning, or whatever your shift is. You want to think about it in a 24-hour cycle. So if your goal is weight loss, if that's what you're actually trying to focus on, you would want to kind of map out the days you work. When does your 24 hours begin and when does it end? And it can be different from everybody else. So if you're somebody who you're sleeping until 11 a.m., you're getting up, you're having your first meal, you're heading out the door to be at work by 2 in the afternoon or whatever, and you're going to work through, you might decide that when you eat that meal before you go in, maybe that's the beginning of your 24-hour cycle. So from there through to the next day. So first, map out your 24 hours. That may look different than your off days. So you may have to almost have two separate schedules. So in that 24 hours, the goal would be that you would hit a certain calorie target based on how much you weigh, what kind of a deficit you're taking, and you would map out your food at your normal eating intervals. And I'm really big on this. I think most of us need to be very cautious and eating about every 3 to 4 hours. Again, if you've read the book, The Diet Fix, and that is from the time you wake up, right? So if you're waking up, you're eating your first meal at 11, then 12, 1, 2, by 3, you'd be having kind of a snack or another meal, and map out your entire day that way. The big difference for you as a shift worker is your sleep will probably get disturbed. You're going to be on a different cycle from everybody else, meaning you might be eating breakfast and dinner at wonky hours compared to everybody else. And you kind of just have to accept that that's the way it is, but you still can create a 24-hour cycle. And within that 24-hour cycle, what your goal is to hit a certain calorie target. So it can feel a little bit confusing too when you're shifting from your work 24 hours to your off. And you kind of almost have to have, again, those two separate schedules. So step one, make up your work schedule based on a 24-hour cycle. Then make up your off days based on a 24-hour cycle. Now, I am going to be honest with you and say that I have worked with pharmacists and people who work really long 4-day schedules. And what I have seen is a lot of times they can get by with eating less or more on their work days versus their off days. Normally, nurses, pharmaceuticals, things like that, where they're doing maybe these longer days for 4 hours. They're doing longer hours for 4 days and they have 3 consecutive days off, or they have 3 days off during the week. What I have seen is they tend to maybe find it easier to eat what they've already laid out on their work days, but then on their off days, they're kind of recouping from having such a crazy, hectic, busy work 4 days. So a lot of times they might need to have more maintenance days than somebody who's working a normal balanced schedule. I just wanted to mention this because I've seen it be very successful. So for example, you've got, 10-hour days, 4 days of the week. You might make those your deficit days. You're so busy, it's hard to stop and eat. So maybe those are your deficit days. When you then transition to your off days, maybe you again schedule all your food out, but you schedule it to your maintenance calories if you're somebody who finds you're extremely hungry on those days because of all the workload, the stress from the 4 days on. So there's kind of several different shift opportunities here. One is somebody who works odd hours and they're maybe working when you and I would be sleeping. And then there's somebody who might be working extremely long days, but having more days off during the week. All of the things that we want to remember around this is you'll have 2 separate schedules, on days, off days of work. Where does the 24 hours begin? Where does it end? Map out your food about every 4 hours. Really pay attention to how you physically feel on your work days versus your off days. Which ones tend to do you find you want to eat more food? maybe make those your maintenance days, make the others your deficit days. Will you maybe lose a little slower? Yes, but you have an added situation that a lot of other people don't have. Your sleep could be greatly impacted by how much you're working, when you're working. So you may need to treat this a little bit differently than somebody who goes to an office setting 9 to 5, come home, full night of rest. You might have to take a slightly slower approach, because where I see the breakdown happen for people is, one, they don't set a schedule. Two, they don't have regular food planned out all through the day like that would be supportive of them. And then the other issue that I see is they ultimately struggle with getting enough rest, enough downtime to kind of reset everything. And then they really struggle through the rest of the week. And so my father worked shift work, so I totally get this. If you're not getting a solid amount of sleep that you really need, it can affect how much hunger you might be feeling, cravings you might be feeling. So I'd rather see you go from a couple days of a deficit to a couple days of maintenance if it allows you to be consistent. So that's the big thing. So I hope this helps. Honestly, if everyone working shift work would create those schedules for themselves, scheduled eating times, have the food prepped and ready to go, make sure it's super filling and nutritious food, make sure you're really thinking through, how do I feel on my off days versus my work days? Am I able to hit a consistent calorie deficit, or do I need a couple of maintenance days thrown in? Really think through this entire process. I hope this helps, and I'll talk to you soon.